Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Coaching for relevance, bringing freedom to potential. We have our coach, our author, our movie star, Randy Swaim, joining us. Believes in all people that they're going to rise to the challenge. And really, with all his years of experience in the military and leadership in many high risk situations, he's always there teaching us how to react, interact, to be, to love, to live. So thank you so much for being here, and always a pleasure having you, darling.
Well, I tell you what, Jill, it's always a pleasure being on with you. So it's great to be here.
Thank you so much. So tell us a little overview about you. I know I'm going to just boast about he's got this movie in the works, he's got a book,
Okay.
but he doesn't like talking about himself. So just tell me about those things first, get them out of the way so you feel a little
Okay.
better. And then,
Well,
yeah.
I'll just say this. Yeah, I got my autobiography and the movie documentary on
Yeah.
being scheduled, and the contracts are already signed and all that, and they have and I think you know this, but the second week of June they're going to be flying me to New York City to go into a studio with apparently a popular show. I've never heard of it, but apparently this person and his show is connected to millions of people around the world.
Amazing.
And we're going to sit there and simply discuss this movie and the aspect of it. And it's a story of my life journey. And so I'm humbled with that, but yeah, that's out there. And I'm not only with my background in aviation, which I'll touch on a little bit today as an example, but
Yeah.
background in aviation and also leadership and leading people. And I'm a Marshall Goldsmith certified executive coach. And also one thing that I'll be bringing today a little bit is the fact that I'm a certified master level neuroplastician
Yeah.
with the Institute for Organizational Neuroscience and NPN Hub over in Germany. And I'm totally honored to be part of what they do and all that. So yeah, but that's all a little bit about me, just to kind of introduce.
Well, thank you for being here. What did you want to bring up here? How are you inspiring us and everyone today?
Well, I tell you, I'm going to give some thoughts to it that some people may kind of have the mindset of, oh, kind of thing, because I'm going to mention something that you and a lot of other people out there are very much aware of this aspect out there, which is really kind of coming on the scene in places all over the world and all over our industries and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a little bit of the insight to it that people need to think about, because if they don't think about this, then when they go into that, their success can be thrown in the trash. And so
Mm-hmm.
just something to think about. I'm going to just kind of throw that out very quickly and talk about it for a little bit and give
Sure.
some insights into it. And some of it deals with one or two things that we've shared before a long time ago,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a new insight, new picture of it and everything.
Awesome.
So you ready?
New button stuck. Sorry, the button's sticking. Yes, I am so
Okay.
ready. Bring it on.
Okay. Okay. I know the feeling very well. Well, listen, what I wanted to do today, and I'm going to give you a picture from the aviation background, which is sort of aligned with the central theme that I'm going to bring
Yeah.
today, because this is something that people across our world want to, keep in mind. And very often they don't. And if you
Mm.
think about it, and I'll first of all just sort of mention it,
Yeah.
but then I'll also give just the aviation sort of image picture, if you will, of it and everything, but then bring it out the fact that people need to really think about this when you're talking about it. And as you know, Jill, I'm very sure that you know this, but as you know, the artificial intelligence and AI is coming into such a key aspect of
Yeah.
societies and industries and all of that kind of stuff. And you have people out there, selling it all over the place and everything. but I'm going to bring an insight into it, because one of
Okay.
the things that you don't want to do, and what I'm about to say is not something that everybody that's out there bringing it, does it dysfunctionally. They may do it at different levels, who
Yeah.
knows? But one of the things that is with AI, one of the things that people will say when they're trying to sell it and bring it to the scene, and there can be a few benefits to it, but they try to make it sound like you don't have to worry about it because this will just take care of it. And you know what? Is not true. And I'll give you an
Mm-mm.
aviation background, and then I'm going
Okay.
to bring in some of the neuroscience aspect that when people, if you have certain AI things going on in your industry or in your company or in your team, these are some things that you need to be aware of, and you need to, as a leader, you need to watch for and be ready for if they happen and everything. But I'll just kind of share just the aspect of from aviation. Of course, particularly with some of the older airplanes, they have various aspects in it and everything. But you got the autopilot in there, and you got the computers that tell the autopilot what to do, go here, go there. And you know what? When you have all the GPS signals out there, the satellites that are given the information, that can be a beneficial thing.
Yeah.
But if you're going in and just throwing your brain in the
Mm-hmm.
trash can and saying, well, this has got it, so it's just, that is not what you want to do. Because
Wow.
guess what? Even AI,
Yep.
regardless of how
Mm-hmm.
great it is at how whatever its perceived capability is, regardless of any of that, it is not perfect.
Wow.
And when you're talking about, artificial intelligence and things like that, there's certain, kind of academic, I guess, if you want, assumptions in it
Yeah.
that it goes for. But you know what? What happens when the scenes are not in line
Mm-mm.
with what it's expecting?
Mm.
And there's been a number of times when I'm evaluating and training a pilot where, in fact, there's one case I can think of right off the top of my head. The autopilot with the uh, FMS, which is the computer navigation computer and everything, took him into a holding pattern, and it was all great. Well, he said, well, okay, I'll tell you what, here's what we're doing next. So let's go ahead and put it in there. Well, guess what? They put in what they were going to do next. And of course, as soon as he put it in the computer, the airplane rolled out and went out of the holding pattern at a time when he wasn't cleared to yet and stuff. And so, you know, the fact is it wasn't the system
Yeah.
that was the problem for him. It was his thinking and how he put his thinking aside. And one of the things that people often don't realize, because they kind of go with what somebody said about
Okay.
the AI and the automation and the capability and all that. One of the things you never want to do is take your brain aside and just say, well, it's doing it. So, whatever. You got to be aware of what it's doing, what it's supposed to be doing. And the bottom line is, if it ever starts to do something that was not what you intended, you have to know that quick. You have
Yeah.
to know right this second. And what are you going to do? And because here's the thing, if you're looking for the AIs to make all your decisions for you, what happens when a decision comes up that doesn't fit all the factors that are on scene that you're aware of,
Yeah.
because it's going with the rote picture that the designer put into it a while back and everything. And so it's just something to think about on that. It's not perfect, but when you're talking about neuroscience, I know when we were talking about neuroscience before, I brought out several of the aspects of neuroscience
Yeah.
and some of the chemicals the brain releases to let you know something and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, once you put it into the AI, your dopamine fix may be going, okay, you're good. It's going to do it. Just go do it. Well, guess what? What happens when it doesn't? Are you
Yeah.
ready for it? And the other part of it too that I throw out is, what you don't want to do is take your neuroscience mental processing ability.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the processing, which assesses what's coming on scene
Yeah.
with what you're seeing, because what the AI is doing It may
Ugh.
be part of the issue, but it may be part of the thing that's holding it back as well. Because when a factor's coming on scene, you may have to kind of adjust it so that it goes in a slightly different direction to either minimize the risk or achieve real success in it and everything. And those aspects, when you're talking about your mental processing, what happens with a lot of people when you're focused on autopilots, or if you're focused on anything that's AI related, artificial intelligence, you're just saying, well, it knows what to do.
Yeah.
You want to bet? Is it aware of every single thing that could come on the scene today?
Mm-hmm.
No, not always. And so, your neuroscience has to be aware so that you can assess what's happening correctly with the right observance of the factors and the situational awareness, and make the right choices so that you achieve the success. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. And a lot of times in the cockpit, guess what? A lot of
Yeah.
times in the cockpits, when you reach up and just take the autopilot off of the nav, where it's not doing the computer stuff anymore, but it's you just push it up here, a button heading or whatever, and it just goes with whatever you set it to go to, kind of thing. And so it's just something to think about, that with because I know my colleagues in NPN Hub and all that really kind of we're speaking a little bit uh, aligned with me for sure, kind of thing, um, about the struggles of AI. If you're getting people, because you're trying to get them to purchase your stuff,
Mm-hmm.
if you're getting people to become dependent on this, and you're trying to kind of laud it to say, well,
Yeah.
this is going to do it all the time. Guess what? May not.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, guess what? When you're talking about something uh, that is a systemic thing, or a part of your organization, the mechanical part of it, guess what? You may have certain aspects that this switch on it doesn't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
The switch is not working, maybe, or whatever. There's just a lot of things like that, that what you have to do with your team and with you and your mindset and your organization. You have to be aware of when and to what extent you see people in your organization that are becoming totally dependent on this, and or are you becoming totally dependent on that? And if you sense that, what do you need to do differently? And the big thing you need to do differently is get people processing again, because what a lot of people do when you're talking about anything that's sort of AI related, or
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, what a lot of people do is, like I jokingly said, but with the degree of reality, they kind of throw their brain and their processing awareness into the trash can, because it's like, well, this is doing it, just let it do it. Well, when we get there,
Yeah.
we'll know, and stuff like that. And that is not what you want in your team. And the other part of it too is, let's face it, mechanical devices in today's world come to a point at some point where all of a sudden they're not functioning right. You may have to purchase a replacement for that component, kind of thing. I mean, that does happen sometimes. And can your team function if that was to happen with the AI?
Oh.
And so it's just some things to think about that when you're relating this aspect of something that is so popular in today's world. You know, you hear a lot of people out there really
Yeah.
marketing it and trying to make it sound like AI is what you want for everything. Yeah, this will just save your butt. This will just make you. This will get you there. You don't have to worry about nothing. If that's kind of what you're experiencing as somebody is
Wow.
talking to you, you need to throw that aside right now.
Oh my gosh.
And some of the questions that you can ask are very valid in talking to somebody like that, uh, and just highlighting what happens when that part of that system's not working anymore. you know, and that kind of thing. Because guess what? That can happen. And it's so it's just something to think about that a lot of people um, kind of hold back from. And you know, like I said, can AI be a positive thing? You know, for in certain circumstances, yeah, it can possibly. Okay, and it's not that it's useless. It's not that it's just nothing. But the bottom line is, if you get your people and your team solely dependent on it,
Yeah.
you're not getting the job done, and you're not preparing, you're not developing, and you're not making your organization and your team prepared for success, because there can come times where the success is when you're not letting this just drive it right now. You know, there can be times in simple time. I know with the with you know, pilots and cockpits, guess what? When you're just flying en route on a, you know, on a route up at you know, 35,000 feet or whatever kind of thing like that, guess what? That can make it easy, because
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah, it's going to this point, to that point, to that point, to that point. Yep. But does that mean that it's always going to be perfect? No, it doesn't. And there's also certain things about somebody's AI. Are you, is somebody aware of what it's not doing?
True.
And you know, that it's not watching. Like you know, one thing I'm thinking about with automation with pilots and cockpits. Guess what? And this is sort of an older version of it. Some of them are newer, but the bottom line is, you know, just because it's flying that route and maintaining the course for the next hour and a half, you know, doesn't mean that it's going to automatically start down on its own necessarily. I mean, you can have certain things set up, you know, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing like that, but you probably have to push a button or change a couple of things to get it to follow you on that. So the bottom line is, and I throw that out to you as something that I'm also just sharing from our neuroscience awareness, that the last thing in the world you want to do when you're talking about any of this, or you hear anybody trying to communicate AI to you, kind of thing like that. Some of the things you have to be aware of. I mean, are
Yeah.
there some benefits possibly to it? Yeah, there can
Mm-hmm.
be. But
Yeah.
the bottom line is, what you don't want to do is throw your processing ability into the wastebasket and just go with what it says.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that, because guess what? There are malfunctions that can happen. There are misinterpretations that can happen. Um, um, and I find it sort of interesting, just as one another aviation related thing, that when you look at um, you know, the airplanes that I kind of work with, if you look at uh, the the nav computer, the FMS stuff down there, they have a certain priority sequence as to where they um, get their position information. And the first place that it looks is, it looks for two GPS signals, you know, from the satellites. And if it sees two GPS signals, it uses that to identify the position that it's at. If it can't find that, it'll typically go to two DMEs, which in pilot phraseology, that's distance measuring equipment, you know, distance from 2 points, and see where that crosses and do that. And if it can't find two of those, it goes to a navaid and a DME. And if it can't do that, it just goes from its initial setups, which are not all that accurate all the time. And so it's just something to think about, that regardless of how new and current your system is, and your uh, uh, AI system is on that, guess what? There can come times where it's not just perfect. And what you have to be aware of is, um, you know, are you throwing your processing ability aside? Are you throwing your situational awareness aside? Or are you throwing your team's awareness aside? Or are you leading them and developing them and helping them have a real sense of the real true situational awareness and the processing ability to make the right decisions at the right time for success. Even if the AI system, the mechanical system is not working perfectly. And so it's just something to think about that when people, if people kind of, kind of focus on the AI inputs and they kind of view that as something that is just automatic, I don't have to do nothing else, all that kind of stuff. You're not getting the job done, and you're not being a leader, and you're not being a situationally aware person. But if you lead your team and model for your team in such a way, and perhaps even for the rest of your organization, that you folks are aware of what you're going to need to do when something doesn't work out just right, or when that AI stuff is missing something there, because that can happen. And so it's just something to think about. A lot of people really tout the AI, but if to the extent that somebody is trying to make you feel like, well, I can just shut my brain off and I can just let it do it, you never want to go there, because the neuroscience you're throwing in your mental processing ability, you're throwing it in the trash can, and you don't want to do that. You want to be aware of when it's not exactly working right. So it's just something to think about on that when you're looking at the aspect of the neuroscience versus just the AI and the artificial intelligence stuff. And if you think about the concept, and I throw this out just as a little sort of a little joke, but if you look at artificial intelligence, how do you know that artificial is correct? Kind of a maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's assuming something, perhaps. Doesn't mean that it's may always be doing that, but you just don't know. And the bottom line is, when you're talking about the AI and stuff, don't set your mindset, don't set your neuroscience aside, don't set your processing ability and that for your team aside, and just go with something. You never want to do that, because what you're doing there is you're taking your success and the situational awareness and throwing it in the trash can. And you don't ever, ever want to do that. So it's just something to think about, even in today's world when you see that out there. Not saying that all AI is just, ridiculous. No, I understand what they're trying to do. But the bottom line is, you got to be aware of when it doesn't fit everything like people try to say that it does, because you know what, it may not sometimes. And just something
Hmm.
to just something to think about on that.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for that. And we're almost at a close. I know we have just a few more minutes left.
Yeah.
And before we sum up, I just also want to ask you just some thoughts on current situations, because I always like consulting my military flight aviation expert as well with
Uh-huh.
what's going on at Newark Airport in New Jersey. That's been in the news lately. Are you familiar with what's happening there?
Yes.
What's going on?
And I will tell you that what I will tell you in a short phrase, because we don't have a lot of time, like you said. But the bottom line is, there, if you think about it, their aspects for their air traffic control service there has really sort of fallen back a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's years back in the past, and it's never been improved.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things is that it's kind of reducing
Yeah.
to a certain extent the way airplanes are coming in or getting out, because the air traffic control people are not there to control them,
Gosh.
and to communicate to them in some respects. And so this whole aspect of, you know upgrading their system, and I know they're out there reconnecting wires and things like that to try to make it better and all that kind of stuff. But it's not just going back to what you had 35, 45 years
Yeah.
ago. It's about, what do you need out there to truly
Yeah.
make this even better? And that's what a lot of people in our societies need to say on that. And so that's what they're trying to do, but there's a lot of work to it. It's not going to be done in 2 weeks or anything like that. There's a lot of work that has to be done with it, and that's they've started working on it, but right now it's just been a lot of, connecting wires and things like that and everything. But there's other aspects about it, of how they want to make it so that the air traffic control services are really bring safety and awareness and success to what they're doing at that airport. And guess what? May be a model for what you can do at other airports, perhaps too. And so, because that's and as you know, up in the New York area, guess what? Here's where a lot of airplanes go, kind of thing. A lot of aspect goes up there, and if the air traffic control is struggling, that's an issue, and no two ways about it. So they're working on trying to do that, but I think that they're looking at how to grossly improve it, which I think they probably need to do in some respects, and just find out with what they have up there, what is it that's going to really make this work.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for that, Randy. And how did you want to kind of sum up for today in our last few minutes?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll just simply say this, that, that never, like I said, when people are trying to give you stuff and go into sort of more modern
Yep.
ideas and thoughts, don't put your processing aside. Don't put your neuroscience aside. Don't put your brain aside. Really understand the factors, really understand the reality of it. And also understand how you and your team are going to be aware of when things need to be a little bit different or whatever in any situation that you get into, whether you're dealing with AI or anything else like that. Uh, the mental processing is key. And that's part of the neuroscience aspect that, so often, and I think you kind of know this, so often in today's world, people have just been, trained and developed to just accept rote superficial academic things. And you know what? Sorry, that's not what you want to do. That's not neuroscience. That's just going with what you hope for. And you know what? You can't do that. Don't assume that. Be able to truly process the factors, the situation, have clarity on what needs to truly happen. And I don't mean in a superficial way, but I mean in this situation.
Yeah.
And how are you going to do that? And how are you going to do that as a team? And it's not just focused on, the autopilot or the AI stuff or whatever, but it's truly having a vision and a sense of what you need to do and how you're going to do it. And
Beautiful.
that's just something that as a leader, we need to be thinking about it. No two ways about it. And also developing that in our team.
Got it. Thank you so much. All right. How do we reach out to you, Randy?
Well, as you know, you can go to my website, coachingforrelevance.com. And if you go to the very front homepage on that at the very bottom, it has my email and my cell phone number on it. And as you know very well, Jill, as we talked times before, that I don't do sales calls. So if somebody wants to just call and have a chat, be glad to do that. If they have a need, yeah, we'll come up with something. But I welcome if anybody wants to have a chat. I welcome that.
Thank you, Randy. As always, a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for today.
Well, sounds good. Well, listen, thank you too, and I appreciate it, and we'll look forward to being with you again.
Can't believe it. All right, awesome. In a few more weeks, congrats on that show coming up and everything that's happening. We'll chat next week, I hope. Bye-bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.